you say to people, and I'm thinking of her specifically because I fought with her on Twitter about this. But what do you say to people like Joyanne Reed, like AOC, like so many other people who are insisting this conversation is just made up? This is a right-wing made up problem. CRT is not being promoted anywhere. You guys don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what CRT is. How do you respond to that accusation when it's levied on you?
Well, first, I think if someone makes that claim with a straight face, they lack they lack intellectual integrity. And I don't have to say very much about Joy Reid, but anyway, that's a different conversation. So I say a few things. Number one, the NEA, the largest teachers union in this country, their board of directors just passed a resolution, several actually, which mentioned critical race theory by name and mentioned they want to defend critical race theory by name. Now, admittedly, the president of the NAA has been very wishy-washy. Well, we don't teach critical race theory, whereas her entire organization just endorsed it. But it's also important to realize that when we say that critical race theory is being taught in education, what we're actually saying is that critical race theory principles are being put in the curriculum. It is true. No one in K through 12, as far as I know, is actually sitting down and reading Kimberly Crenshaw or Derek Bell. And no one's doing that. Very few folks do that in general. Even in law school, very few folks do that. But what is happening is that the principles that those people have laid down throughout their works, all these ideas of oppression, institutional and sort of oppression, those are being infused in the curriculum vis-a-vis the 1619 Project, and those are having an impact. So that's when we say critical race, that's what we're actually talking about. It's sort of a proxy for sort of indirect infusing of certain principles into the curriculum. So I would just say to Joy Reid and anyone else that they're number one, they're trying to run from the issue. And number two, they're not understanding the nuances of the issue either. They're just speaking nonsensically.
We actually say a lot on our podcast, and we've been saying it since 2009, since we've had a site, and that is, I don't see color, and one of the things you say on your site, in fact, I think your tagline is advocating for a race-blind America. That is your tagline. And so many times when we've said that, when I've said, I don't see color, I was raised not to see color, people will say, well, that just, especially now in light of the whole white fragility movement that we see, people will look at us when we say that and say, well, that just proves that you're racist, Right. And so I think that's where I want to start. What do you say to people who say that? And then I want to get into how this whole Color Us United started. But what do you say to somebody that says, if you say that you're race blind, then you're obviously, racist. You can't win in today's world. You just can't win.
Right. And first, let me thank both of you for having me on. It's an immense honor. I'm happy to be here, and you guys have a very bubbly and lively setup here, which makes me even more happy to be here. So sometimes I do interviews with people have very, not so lively setup. So I'm happy to be here. Well, so on our website, we say that we want a race-blind society. And we use the word race-blind because the word colorblind has been tainted so much, incidentally, with a lot of negative perceptions. Because a lot of people today do not see race, or racism rather, as a matter of intention or values. They see race, or racism rather, as a matter of impacts. Okay, if this particular thing happens to Black folks here that happens to be negative, regardless of if that particular thing was actually racist in intent, that thing is racist. So when you say that you do not see color, you're saying that you do not see, to them, you do not see injustice. Now, we say race blind because we believe that race itself, as these people claim to believe, is an arbitrary characteristic which says nothing meaningful about the content of our individuality.
You know very well, as it being sort of the driver of what started your organization, that CRT and this entire this whole idea of seeing race in every system, in every American system, and characterizing America as inherently evil because of its historic racist past, makes it irredeemable. And because that is such a prominent message or narrative that's around right now. How I think what a lot of people, I hear from a lot of parents who are worried about this in schools. How do you encourage parents to fight back? Because I know, there's a lot of people going to school board meetings and pushing back there. But I think a lot of people, myself included, you just feel so helpless at how this seems to have overtaken the narrative these days. It's everywhere. It's unavoidable.
Yeah. So I think there are a few things folks need to do to fight back. Number one, we have to know exactly what critical race theory or oppression theory is. Because a lot of people, even a lot of people who have good intentions who want to go fight this thing, have no idea what they're talking about. So critical race theory is a few things. I'll try to be very concise here. But it is primarily a collection of academics who want to investigate and understand American society by critiquing and deconstructing our institutions through the lens of them being white supremacist and racist. And it does that through this sort of broad range historical analysis of from slavery to all kind of things that happened after slavery. They can connect to their analysis. And it also does it by entertaining certain policy prescriptions. This is what the anti-racist part of critical race theory does. So that's what it is in a nutshell. And of course, critical race theory has a few assumptions that, our institutions are racist, they're oppressive, they hurt people. Racism is not a matter of intention or value, or is not strictly a matter of intention or value. It's a matter of impacts and all that kind of stuff. So you have to know what you're fighting. And if people can say, hey, well, I think racism actually is a matter of intention or value, you can fight back against it like that. You can say, hey, I think our institutions are actually not racist. Or if there have been people on an institutions who have been racist, that does not mean the institution itself is racist. It's just racist people have been in the institution. There are all kinds of ways we can intellectually battle and slay this dragon, I think.